Yo, hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Total BS Podcast. My right-hand man right here, as always, Mr. Justin Spears. What's up, Justin?
Saul, first of all, happy Mother's Day to all the amazing moms out there. It's your day. I'm glad we get to celebrate it. But, man, another weekend of last episode in the books. And Saul, I got to say, I think this one might have been the best.
Of Last Dance.
Yes.
In the books. Hey, man, we might as well just go ahead and get right into it.
Your fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just part of the program. Spit your best 16 if you must. You're not whack, you just sound whack rapping after us. Yo, your fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just a part of this program. Spit your best 16 if you must. You not whack, you just sound whack rapping after us.
Yo, how do we like the new intro?
It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, man. Hey, so
flavor.
Hey, major shout out to MC Squared out in San Antonio. Those are my guys. Believe it or not, back in my old days, I used to be a drill sergeant. We call them military training instructors in the Air Force.
On a couple of occasions. Not at me in particular, but
and so one of the guys that used to be in one of my flights, I had tapped him up because he does some underground hip hop stuff and it's pretty good. And so I hit him up and said, "Hey man, we're looking for an intro. Would you mind if we use some of your music?" He was like, "Hell yeah, bet." So we might actually have him on next week. Luis LQ Iverson and his MC Squared little duo right there. It's fantastic stuff.
And one thing that you can expect from us moving forward is putting a light on music that you might not hear on your everyday Apple Music stream or Spotify stream. We love local artists. We appreciate the grind and the hustle that these guys put into their craft. MC Squared, I mean, you listen to his flow, you listen to the production in his music, and I think it's great that we get to use our platform to possibly, give them some exposure. But I appreciate MC Square for the awesome song.
Hey, any love is good love is what
Absolutely.
I say. So there you
Absolutely.
go. Especially on this beautiful Mother's Day. Like Justin said, just a shout out to all the moms out there doing their thing. And we got a pretty cool show today, man. I mean, it's jam-packed from beginning to end. We got my guy, Steve Gilbert from MLB. He's a writer for Major League Baseball. And he's going to come on because he has some unique experiences with Michael Jordan because he was with him during his fall ball days when he was playing for the Scottsdale Scorpions. So we're going to bring him on here in a moment. And then at the end of the show or midway through the show, Justin, who do we have coming on?
We have Chris Wilmore, a.k.a. Scarface. This man, who was once upon a time a convicted felon, he decided to, you know what? I'm going to start a backyard brawl in my home state of Virginia where he lives, but there's no fee. The fighters don't get paid. He's using this as a way to prevent gun violence in his area. So if you have beef, you get into the ring with somebody, you put on gloves because it's not bare knuckle.
Yeah,
Those bare knuckle.
It's guns down, gloves up.
Guns down, gloves up, which I think is an awesome movement. And this guy started this in 2009. He's built it up over the last 10 plus years. He's got over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. He's got thousands of Instagram followers. He's got this private Facebook group that's got 30,000 members in it. Like, this guy has turned this thing into like this little, like, okay, we're going to put some guys from the neighborhood and put them in the ring. And it's now turned into this big thing. And I think it's really awesome. And we're going to get him on coming up here in about half an hour or so.
Yeah, buddy, it's going to be awesome. Plus, Justin, man, you got to tease. You can't just give it all away at the beginning of the episode. Come on now.
No. Believe me, there's a lot more than what I just said. Chris Wilmore, Scarface, he's going to talk about it. It's going to be great.
Hey, speaking of a lot more than what you probably saw tonight on The Last Dance, my guy, Steve Gilbert, coming on. And Steve, what is up?
Saul, Justin, how you guys doing tonight, huh? I'm glad you got my name right down there. You didn't put Scarface down there by my name. That would I have enough trouble as it is.
Well, we appreciate you jumping on. Obviously, I hit you up earlier this week because we've had many chats about your days dealing with Michael Jordan. Heck, your Twitter profile pic is with you and Michael Jordan. So if you weren't really paying attention to Steve Gilbert before, if you take a look at that Twitter profile pic, it tells you everything you need to know. Steve, what did you think about tonight's episodes, especially the baseball part of The Last Dance?
Yeah, I find it so interesting because I think people get a real good look at Michael behind the scenes, and some of it is just so familiar to me, and the banter back and forth with his security guards or whoever happens to be around him. I mean, that's part of who he is, and you can't be around him if you have a thin skin, and he enjoys it if you give it back to him a little bit too. So I really enjoyed that. I disappointed they didn't show him in a fall league uniform at all, but I think people got to see, he never looked comfortable to me in a baseball uniform. It maybe because I was so accustomed to seeing him in a basketball uniform. Maybe it was because he was so tall. I don't know what it was, but he just never looked right to me in a baseball uniform. But one thing that they pointed out in there that I think was sometimes gets lost is how hard he worked at the baseball thing. I mean, he was dedicated. He was in the cage when he was here in the fall league. He was the first one here and the last one to leave. And that was important to him. It wasn't just a show for him. He took it very seriously. While I like to have fun off the field, he worked, harder than anybody when it came time to work.
What was your role with him during the Arizona Fall League when he was here?
Well, I was in charge of media relations for the league. So basically I was with him each day that he was out here. And
I assume he was his own full-time job, wasn't he?
Yes. It's funny because when they interviewed me for this job and they said, usually it's something that the fall league didn't get a lot of attention, still doesn't get a lot of attention. So it was more about what's your plans for getting the fall league some attention. And so I, ran through kind of what my suggestions would be for that. And then they said, oh, by the way, Michael Jordan might be coming and play in this league. And I knew right away if that was the case, I thought there's no chance that's going to happen. But if it did happen, that my job was going to change, and it did, from trying to get attention to managing an overwhelming amount of attention to a league that just wasn't used to it, wasn't really necessarily equipped for it.
So tell us about the media frenzy, the fan frenzy just around Michael Jordan being in the Arizona Fall League.
Yeah, I remember, they had workouts the first, I want to say 4 or 5 days over at what was then the Giants minor league complex over there on Camelback and Hayden. And so they had put up kind of temporary fencing because they knew there was going to be so many people out there. And it was just a crush of people. It was amazing. We had security kind of getting us through the crowds. The thing was, I was told by the security guys right away, was just keep moving. No matter what, just keep moving, especially if you were going to walk in front of him. That was the one thing that he was very sensitive about, is you had to keep moving. The last thing he wanted to do was be bumping up against you. So I learned a ton during my time there, and just kind of watching really how grown men would lose their minds when they saw Michael Jordan. I mean, I had dealt with athletes before that. I had dealt with, well-known athletes before that. But he was at a different level, especially at that time. I mean, we would be driving in his car and on Camelback, and we'd stop at a light, and somebody would hop out and knock on the window and ask for an autograph, I mean, people just, they would lose it when they saw him. And it wasn't just kids, and it wasn't, just women. It was like men, like grown men were just so thrilled to get a look at him. It was really kind of a surreal experience. And it made me kind of wonder, you always think, hey, I'd love to be Michael Jordan, man, if I could have that kind of talent and make that kind of money. But you see his life and you realize that there is no place that he can go and blend in. And you realize that there's a pretty high cost for all that as well.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If I ever met Michael Jordan, he's the one guy out there that I've never met, and he's been like my idol my whole life. He's been like, that guy. I mean, I'd probably fangirl too. Even in the profession that we're in, if I saw him walk into Chase Field or Talking Stick Resort, I would probably squeal a little bit.
Well, it's just like that one scene in the Space Jam when he's actually playing baseball and the catcher is telling him like, yo, man, thank you so much for signing my basketball. My kid thinks I'm a hero now.
Yeah.
And that's just the kind of effect Michael Jordan had.
Yeah. When I went to pick him up at the airport when he first got here, he had his own plane. And so that was the first for me. You get to like pull right out onto the
He had his own plane.
Sure.
Yeah, his own plane, of course. Or just a private plane, whatever. It was a private plane. So The first time I'd ever pulled out onto a runway to pick somebody up before.
Did it look like an Air Jordan?
I was so nervous that I probably wasn't even paying attention. And so, again, I had experience dealing with athletes before, but when he started, you're talking to a kid that grew up in Chicago, huge Bulls fan before they were good, before they had Michael, and then once they had Michael, huge Michael Jordan fan. And when he got off that plane and started down the steps, I remember it was kind of like a cartoon figure had kind of come to life right in front of me. And that was one of the few times when I've been around an athlete and just been like, wow, okay, got to get it together here because job to do. But that was the first time it was like a cartoon character coming to life right in front of me.
Steve, I'm curious, because in The Last Dance tonight, we really saw the kind of alpha dog Michael Jordan was, and how big of an asshole he was to his teammates. Was he like that as a baseball player, or did he kind of realize, okay, listen, there's kind of a pecking order here. I'm not the top dog here. Maybe I need to tone it back.
Well, I could tell you, Michael always thought he was a top dog wherever he was at. Listen, he played dominoes, and if he lost, you were going to play with him until he won. He played cards, and he was going to play until he won. That's just the kind of guy he was. That's just how he's wired. Playing in a pickup basketball game with him, I saw that firsthand. This is nothing to him, but it meant everything. He wasn't going to lose. So I think that's just his nature, and his nature is to take that competition seriously. And if he's going to go out there, he's going to be the best, and he's going to be the best no matter what he's doing, inside the clubhouse as well. Is he going to have the best shoes from Nike? Who's going to get the best shoes? Who's going to, you saw him in The Last Dance flipping quarters. All those kinds of things he wants to win at if he's going to play something.
So, Steve, you're a writer for MLB. Obviously, you know how to construct a story like no one else. You know where I'm going with this. Despite your ASU education, can you please
Here we go.
You're with a couple Wildcats, obviously. I had to throw that in there. I almost, for full disclosure for Wildcat people looking out, I almost changed my hat just to, put it out there, but whatever. Steve, give me one of your favorite Michael Jordan stories that I know you have in your bag.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite, but I think it's the one that people enjoy the most. It's obviously the most embarrassing for me, so that probably makes it even more enjoyable for some people.
Fantastic. Even better.
On Sunday nights, they would get together and play basketball, and these pickup games have become kind of legendary since he made his comeback and talked about, that was when he started to get the itch to play basketball again. And Terry Francona invited me to play one night, and it was Terry Francona, myself, and the coaches with Michael and the coaches against his teammates. And, these guys are well-tuned athletes. I am not. Let's be honest here. So I was assigned to cover Curtis Goodwin that night, who had stolen like 59 bases that year in AA. So you can see where this story is going. I spent most of the game just grabbing onto his jersey, hanging on to him. But long story short, a couple things happened in there. One is I was not used to playing 5-on-5. I'd only played 2-on-2, 1-on-1 basketball. So they would continue to run me through screens all the time.
Ooh.
And inevitably it was right into Michael. And so Michael would say, Stevie, you got to slide. You have to slide through these screens. And so he would put those big hands that he had on my back and just kind of literally slide me. But he would do it. I'd slide through. The next time I'd turn and wham right into him. And it just pissed him off like you would not believe. So at one time I did get the ball from him. And this is very embarrassing. I must have, because it was a rebound that he pulled off. So I must not have been able to get down the court in time. That's why I was ahead of everybody going the other direction. But he threw me an almost full court pass, and it was perfect. Right into my hands. And I had a layup right in front of me, and I go to lay it up, and Goodwin comes running up behind me, and he screams in my ear. It's really loud. And I shorted it right there.
Oh, man. Hold on. What was Michael Jordan's facial expression right after that? Did you see?
Oh, he was not happy. That was not because for him, losing was not an option. So if we were going to be if the game was even remotely close, the ball wasn't going to leave his hands.
Especially to those guys.
What's that?
Especially to those guys, his teammates.
Yeah, especially to those guys. And so after the game, I was shockingly having trouble catching my breath because I don't remember breathing like at all during the game. I was so nervous. And the trainer said, it'd feel better if you went over to Scottsdale Memorial and just got looked at just to make sure that everything's okay. And I was like, I don't think so. I'm fine. They're like, no, it'd feel better if you go. And I go, if I go, then every time I tell this story, playing basketball with Michael Jordan, it ends up with I'm in the hospital. Like, who wants to tell that story, right? So they're like, no, it'd feel better if you go. So I go to the hospital, and one of the security guys took me over. And it's Sunday night, Scottsdale Memorial right there next to the giant spring training facility, and jam-packed with people. Whatever he said to the nurse, all of a sudden I'm being put right into a nice room all by myself, and they got to put oxygen on me, right? So I'm laying there with an oxygen mask over my face, thinking to myself, wow, this is really going to be a cool story. I'm going to want to tell people, hey, you play basketball with Michael Jordan? Yeah, I ended up in the hospital. It was great. So these doctors and nurses, it gets around that, this guy played basketball with Michael Jordan. So they were coming in my room. What's it like playing basketball with Michael Jordan? What's it like playing basketball with Michael Jordan? And each time I got to take off my mask and answer them. And finally, the last person who asked, I had had enough. And I said, what's it like? What's it like? I'm in the effing hospital. That's what it's like. So that story made its way into Bob Green's book about Michael Jordan's return to basketball. And apparently that was, according to Bob, a very popular story when he would do his book signings. People really enjoyed laughing at the guy that ended up in the hospital afterwards. I was fine, of course, like I knew I was, but yeah, that's probably my biggest Michael Jordan story. And so the next day I walk into the clubhouse and he's sitting in front of his locker, and he had those big hands, he always had ginormous hands. And he did one of these, a long finger. And whenever he did that, that was trouble. I knew right away that whenever I got the little finger wag thing, he was upset about something. So I go walking over and he goes, "You're never playing basketball with us again." It was a relief to hear, right? And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I can't have a good time if I got to worry about your ass keeling over on the floor and dying." That's my story for you there.
That's fantastic. Well, I'd be remiss before we let you go to, see how you're doing. How's the family, during this whole pandemic? And what's your thoughts on the proposal upon proposal of what Major League Baseball might be trying to do here soon?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We're doing well as can be expected right now. And I think right now when you're seeing all these different proposals out there, I think they are so anxious to play. I think both sides really want to get somewhat of a season in. And so I think they're kind of throwing all kinds of ideas out there. I think they've come up with tons of different ones, some of them which have leaked that you've seen, whether it's an all Arizona plan or an Arizona Florida plan. I think they're just determined to try to get some of a season in. Now, whether or not, this virus allows for that to happen, whether or not we're able to get our testing up to speed in this country to allow that to happen, I don't know. But I do know that they're investigating every possible scenario and game planning for that. And, we'll have to see what happens.
Of all the ideas that have been thrown out there, let's just say, hey, we're going to pick one of these scenarios and we're going to run with it and we're good to go. Which one do you think was the most feasible and more realistic?
Well, I could say I think the one that was the least feasible and realistic was the one where they were going to self-quarantine themselves for 4.5 months away from their family. I immediately heard from players on that one about I can't leave my wife and kids in the middle of a pandemic to go play baseball and not see them. So I think that was probably the least viable of all those. It sounds like they would like to try to get games in their own each team's home parks if possible, depending on if those states are reopened or what's going on with the virus. So again, there's so much unknown. It's really hard to kind of to pinpoint something like that.
For sure. Justin?
No, I'm all done.
All right. Hey, all right.
Listen, I'm just hoping that the Sun Devils can get on the football field this fall. I mean, that's.
I mean, you got a potential Heisman Trophy winner right there at quarterback, right? I mean, that's why not? Dreaming is free.
And we have plenty of time right now to do that, don't we?
Trust me, Justin and I are not looking forward to football season. I can probably assure you of that.
So, honest question. When do you think is the next time the Territorial Cup is coming back to Tucson?
Oh, I think we have to move on to our next guest. So
yeah,
wrap it up.
Well, Steve, we appreciate you joining us on the Total BS podcast. My feelings about you, brother. I appreciate you coming on, and thanks for sharing some of these great stories.
I love you, brother. It's always good talking with you.
Thank you, Steve.
Justin is a blast, and anytime you want to have me on, just let me know.
Fantastic. You, Steve Gilbert, MLB writer, joining us on the Total BS podcast. That was fantastic, right?
I loved it. That was great. The story, like how many people can say like, yeah, I played basketball with Michael Jordan outside of NBA players.
Well,
that's so great.
Steve is actually hanging around a little bit, but Dan Bickley actually mentioned that he had went up to Michael Jordan and asked if he could play in a pickup game with him. And Michael looked at him and said, "Why do you want to do that?" And just walked on. So at least Steve got on the court. So,
but then afterwards, you're not playing pickup with us.
Yeah. Again. I mean, hey, but at least he got a run in. How many of us can say we got a run in with Michael Jordan? I mean, that's legendary stuff right there.
Absolutely.
Whether you end up in the hospital or not, doesn't matter. You got to play ball with Michael Jordan. That's all that matters, right?
If somebody's going to put you in the hospital, if it's Michael Jordan, you could say, okay.
I mean, the only other Mike I would want to be put in the hospital by was probably Tyson, but that's probably way more painful. So we're waiting for Chris Scarface Wilmore to show up here in a little bit. But again, our shout out to Steve Gilbert for joining us on the Total BS podcast. Justin, before we get to Chris, so many things going on in the world of sports right now. We had just mentioned a couple of them with Steve on the MLB potential COVID realignment and how they would be dealing with this. A couple other things came out today. Adam Silver was, he had a press conference with a lot of the NBA on Friday, and a lot of things came out of that. First of all, the thought of the NBA returning anytime before June or July 1st, you can squash that. That's not going to happen. What were your thoughts overall in terms of the preparation and really the perspective that the NBA has? Because I feel like the NBA has been more dark than everybody else in terms of the reality of the situation that we could be facing. What do you think about that?
Well, I think, the NBA too, they're taking this, it's not in a light manner. This is a very serious for the NBA because you just got to think out of all the professional leagues in the United States, the NBA was the one that had the most cases. No, I mean, the NFL had a couple of cases. I knew UFC this past weekend, they had a fighter that tested positive for COVID-19, but he was pulled from the card. I mean, the NBA, they were the big domino that fell when all of this really became a big thing in the United States. We were in Las Vegas together, Saul, for the Pac-12 tournament. Yeah. Rudy Gobert tests positive for COVID-19, and that just seemed like the huge domino that really shut down sports all across the United States and worldwide. So the NBA, they're taking this carefully, and I applaud Adam Silver. I think he's been one of the best professional sports commissioners in United States sports history. Yeah, he's very progressive. He's all about his players, and he's all about doing the right thing. With that being said, Adam Silver's like, hey, if there's no cure, I mean, we may not return back to basketball. You hear Mark Emmert talking about the NCAA. If there's no students on campus, what's the point of having athletic events? And then of course, you go into like the NCAA, like the TV contracts and all that, but that's a different story. But man, it's just.
Well, I mean, Mark Emmert straight out said no students, no games, period.
No, but also Adam Silver, according to Adrian Wojnarowski from ESPN, he said, I mean, there could be a possibility of the NBA going to like Orlando or Las Vegas for neutral site games, similarly to what the UFC did this past weekend. No fans, only credentialed members, fighters, participants. Only those people are allowed. But honestly, man, I don't know if the NBA is going to follow suit what the UFC did, but I don't think it's looking good.
No, I want to have my hopes high because, after next weekend, I feel like reality is going to come slap us all in the face again. These Sunday evenings from 6 to 8 have been very nice, very fun, to get your mind off of what's going on in the world with this Last Dance. And I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping that cooler heads will prevail and we'll be able to find some resolutions to some of these things that will enable sports to come back. But as it stands right now, it's not very promising because you have to think about all the little logistics that go along with it, not just the testing and if it's available, but also if you're talking about fans in any way, shape, or form, you have to have a solution on how to stop a spread, and you don't have that right now. So how is it going to go from A to Z? Yeah, exactly.
There are no answers. And, the one thing that I'm really worried about, Saul, here is, things are starting to open up. The United States, it's not on lockdown as it was, a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. The United States restaurants are starting to open up again all across the country. My worry is what's going to happen if there's this huge second wave and then we're all the way back to square one. You can forget about this NBA season. You can forget about possibly the NFL season, and you can definitely forget about baseball season.
Justin, I'll tell you this right now. If there's a second wave that comes back in this country with the vengeance, you might as well forget about 2021. Until there's a vaccine, there probably won't even be sports until then. And that's the scary part about all this. I don't think people realize. I know people have their own agendas and their own political affiliations, and people are seeing things through certain lenses, right? I don't try to go down into that. I just try to see what the experts are saying. I don't rely on the news sources. I just look at what is the CDC saying about this? What are my local health officials saying about this? And everything that they're saying is like, we're not out of the woods yet. So, Mark Emmert, I think, made a good, I don't know if you could
because if students aren't allowed on campus, why should student athletes who practically live on campus? They're at these facilities all the time on campus. Why do they get a pass, and why are they being put at risk to possibly getting COVID-19 as opposed to normal students who are required to take online classes? So I don't know.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I don't know where this came from, but we have a comment from Marianne Deporter Barrett. Cafe Poca Cosa, please. Cafe Poca Cosa, by the way, is like one of the most legit restaurants down in Tucson. They source everything natively, and it's just a fantastic restaurant. I don't know what the context was behind that comment, but okay.
I never tried it before.
Hey, it's pretty dope. It's right in your neck of the woods. Justin is down there in Tucson. So as we wait for Chris Wilmore to show up, Justin, another thing kind of going along those lines, Mark Emmert talking about the students not coming back. The NFL is in a unique situation as well, because a lot of the times NFL teams, when they do training camp, they do isolate themselves away from the public. The Cardinals used to isolate themselves up in Flagstaff, and they were in dorms and things of that nature. I wonder how realistic of a possibility that would be. Also, with Mark Emmert just a minute ago, let me backtrack. ASU has already gone on the record saying students are coming back. The University of Arizona, same thing. So I wonder if the students do come back, will sports happen? I don't know. But going back to the isolation part of it, because I think that's when the real dominoes start to fall. If the NFL, for whatever reason, says we got to push the schedule back, or we can't play this season because it's not logistically possible, I think you see this country go from one level to another, and the despair and the sadness will really hit home for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, it all depends on what these other leagues are going to do. What's going to happen with Major League Baseball? What's going to happen with the NBA?
But they don't have the impact the NFL does. The NFL is the biggest.
No, but I'm saying the NFL's decision, will it be based off of what other leagues decide to do, and where the curve is at in the United States at that time. Because when should the NFL really start worrying about the delay of the football season? I'm not worried about the NFL, the start of the season going on right now, because it starts in what? August, September?
August.
So that's the time the NFL season gets started. How many months is that from now? 3? You know, teams, they start to get together over the summer and start preseason training camps, like you said, in isolation. But, you know, what's going to happen between now and the start of preseason training camp with MLB, with NBA? Because if none of those leagues are willing to get back, does Roger Goodell, does he want to be that guy that rolls the dice and say, look, the UFC did it this past weekend at UFC 249. Why can't the NFL do it? Is Roger Goodell that commissioner that's going to roll the dice? I don't think he is, honestly.
No, not only that, but also, okay, you put all the people that were in that UFC event, you could probably house them on one NFL team on the sideline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we maybe 30 fighters that participated yesterday. You know, an NFL roster is 53. And then you have the guys that have to be held out and the practice squad players and the coaches and blah, blah, blah. You're like, it's just crazy. So,
yeah,
man, I'm not going to go down this road where I get sad about it, but you know, it doesn't look promising at this moment.
Yeah. I saw a Washington Post story, and listen, I don't want to like rag on the Washington Post here.
Hey, no. Don't even do it. Don't even do it, man, because at the end of this show, we got a little segment called Don't Be That Guy. And if I think you're going where I think you're going, that's where I'm going with it.
Okay.
So we'll hold that off.
Little tease.
Man, this is the second time you've been trying to steal some thunder, man.
I'm sorry, man.
Come on now.
I'm sorry.
Anyway,
we'll do that. We'll do that for the end. But
for sure,
man, you know, I just think, you know, we need sports right now. We need to do everything in a smart way, and fingers crossed. Let's just hope, you know, if football is back, I'll be okay. All is right in the world. If football is back on track, if we get college football and the NFL, hallelujah.
For sure. Yeah. Well, you know, hey, man, we're still waiting for Chris. I don't know if he's going to show up or not. You might want to check on your mans right now.
Yeah, I know.
But as we wait for him, like we said, we'll continue to just spew about some of the stuff. So Last Dance, let's get back into that. So many cool moments in that show tonight. The one that got me the most was at the end of episode 7, the very last minute or so, and Jordan's trying to explain why he's as competitive as he is, and you know, pretty much like, if you're not on board with it, I can't help you, because you know, sports mean everything to me, and playing and being competitive and winning means everything to me. So there's a certain level of some people will call it crazy, a certain level of crazy that you have to get to in order to get those around you that don't have your ability up to another level in order to help you win. And he got emotional about that. And I'm not gonna lie, that definitely got me too. Because that resonates, especially in this day and age where it seems like, you know, competition isn't as valued as it once was. You know, basketball players are playing 1 million AU games. Kids are playing 1 million games a year with Little League and Pop Warner and all this other stuff. And so if you win or lose, it doesn't matter. You come back the next day, you're going to play some more. Like, that's all that matters. Like, and for him to say that, it really hit home.
Yeah. I think we saw the psychopathic Michael Jordan, the person that Michael Jordan warned us all about before this documentary.
Yeah.
Because remember, before The Last Dance aired, the very first episode, he told people, listen, a lot of people are not going to like me after they watch this documentary. That's just the way it's going to be, because there's just so much footage of Michael Jordan attacking teammates. Poor Scott Burrell, you know, he's over here shooting free throws, and Michael Jordan is, you know, calling him
names.
Some names, and he's just sitting there and taking it. He was just this ultimate competitor, this alpha dog, but he was going to get at you because, like he said, he wanted his teammates to share that same success that he wanted. He wanted everybody to be at the same level. And until you get on the same level as him, because Michael Jordan, he set the bar. One thing that I really took away from that when he was talking about, you know, criticizing his teammates and really pushing his teammates, he said, I never asked my teammates to do something I did not do.
Yeah.
So he was the one that set the bar. He was the golden standard for everybody else. And he wanted those guys to get on the same level as him. And that's what makes him one of the best alpha dogs of all time and one of the all-time competitors in sports. It was awesome. And to see Michael Jordan really just become vulnerable. You know, we're so used to seeing Michael Jordan as this jerk, but for him to really talk about, you know, being competitive and being this jerk, for him to get emotional and start to tear up, I thought that was awesome. And Saul, I know you shed a tear too at the end.
Oh, dude. I mean,
because I see the same thing in you, my friend. You were the same. You were the same. As long as I've known you, you have always kept me in check to the point where I'm like, you know what? Screw Saul. But like Michael Jordan said, you never asked me to do something that you did not do, and that's why I appreciate you.
You know, I was going to go another way with that, and I appreciate the compliment, but folks, if you've ever seen Mr. Justin Spears on the basketball court, you have never seen anybody go a full 180 before in your life. Justin is like one of the sweetest guys you could ever meet. He's so nice. We get on the basketball court, and this dude turns into a psycho. Like, he's cussing at everybody. He's throwing the ball like, this is BS. That's a foul. Oh, travel. Like, he's that dude on the playground that you're like, dude, somebody get him off the court because I just don't want him here anymore. So don't let him sweet talk you into saying nice things, because this is how this man is in real life. But in all seriousness, you know, like, I totally resonated with that. And then at the end with his father, I've always seen that clip of Jordan getting down on the ground and crying. I've never heard it.
Oh yeah.
And tonight you got to hear it in its full audio. And man, that was tears. That was instant tears, because you could feel how much in despair he really was.
Absolutely. And he felt the pain from his father no longer being there. Yeah. And it really resonated with me, because I lost my father not too long ago. And you know, when you do something where you're like, man, I really wish I could show my dad. My dad would be so proud. You get that vulnerable feeling, and you get that moment to where, like, shoot, I really wish my dad was here to see this moment. And for Michael Jordan to have that moment, you know, right after coming back, I thought was great.
Josh Rowlett thought that was funny, huh?
What's that?
about your alter ego on the basketball court.
Oh,
and then Kenyon Johnson saying, "What's good?" I don't know what's good, man. We're waiting for Mr. Chris to show up. I'm sure he's going to be here any minute.
Scarface, man.
Yeah, man. We're waiting on him. We'll give him a few more moments, and then we might have to just move on. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, that was fantastic stuff tonight. This whole series from 1 to 8 has just been everything I hoped it would be and more. And next week, we'll go ahead and talk about next week right now, because next week we have something really cool in store. We have we'll call it a Chicago Last Dance extravaganza. We're trying to rope in every single person we can possibly think of out there in the sports and celebrity community to come on to our show next week. And so we have Paige Damascus, we have Corey Williams. We're going to see if we can bring back Scott Williams, who played on the first three-peat. And then we're going to see if we can bring Steve back. And we're just going to have a nice flowing roundtable all session long, and we're going to try and obviously add a few more after that. And
that's one thing that I've really taken away from this whole Last Dance documentary experience. So many different angles and relationships and ties to the Chicago Bulls and to Michael Jordan. I think it's great to hear. Like earlier in this podcast, you heard about Steve Gilbert and, you know, his relationship with Michael Jordan when he was down here in Arizona playing baseball, and then you're having that story about playing basketball with him. Everybody's got an interesting Michael Jordan story. Next week is going to be a Guest-a-Palooza, and we're going to have so many Chicago Bulls MJ stories. It's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Major, hey, I feel you, man. We're waiting. We're waiting. I'm sure he'll be here any second now. I mean, it's past midnight on the East Coast, so I don't know what else is going on. It's 9 o'clock over here. We're having a good time. So we'll give it a few more minutes, and then if he doesn't show, he doesn't show, and we got to move on, you know?
Yeah. But we'll give it some time. I'm currently, by the way, I got the MJ sneaker on my phone.
Oh, there you go.
It's so awesome watching the Last Dance documentary, seeing all these like crazy shoes that are so popular still to this day, and you're seeing Michael Jordan wearing them in games. But I am contacting Scarface as we speak. I'm messaging him. I'm going to see if we can get him on. They agreed to it. I was excited. They even kind of like hyped it up before the podcast. They were sharing it with all the people. That's why we have a lot of people tuned in asking about street beef. But
I mean, street beef's gold, pro. Hey, sunshine.
Speaking of sunshine, I got a lot of it today.
I mean, I sent out the link. Steve Gilbert got in just fine. Hopefully we got the right info. And then you have the link as well. So you could always text it to him. Just say, hey, click this button and get in here. So, we'll see here. We'll give it a couple more minutes. But
so I got to ask you, was today the best set of the Last Dance documentary so far?
It was the most emotional. Like I felt I felt in it all the way. So, Will, what do you want to know about street beef? I'm the street beef heavyweight champion. Kenyon Johnson. We got Kenyon Johnson. He is the street beef heavyweight champion, apparently. Kenyon Johnson is in our comment section right now, and he wants to know what's going on. So I don't know. We'll give it some time. So anyway, but I felt like it was the most impactful for me. I could identify with it the most today, just because I remember my mentality when I was a younger kid and how I idolized MJ growing up, and it was remarkable to see that I didn't feel like I was that far off from him. Now, talent-wise, I was a world apart from Michael Jordan. Obviously, I didn't even get anywhere near the league. But mentality-wise, I just felt like, hey, it was I was on track with what he was thinking and how hard sometimes, my teammates hated my guts. They weren't big fans of me at all. I remember my senior year, I almost got into a fight because my coach was like, why are our players mixing practices? And, we had a couple players that went to a Suns game, it's not a big deal. But I challenged him, and then and one of those guys was my best friend, and he wanted to fight me. And I was just like, well, that's cool. Here we go. And I felt like we were going to ruin the season, but we didn't. And we moved on. And I just felt like, okay, these are those moments he's talking about and how you're challenging your teammates to get better because you need them to get better. So
I really loved all the stories that went along with it. And like you said, it was very emotional, the most emotional set that we've seen so far. But I mean, all the stories that I wanted to see all happened tonight. I wanted to hear about the practice when Michael Jordan punched Steve Kerr. And I thought it was incredible that they're teammates and they've known each other for a little bit. And Michael Jordan doesn't have Steve Kerr's phone number. He's hunting down people to get Steve Kerr's phone number just so he could apologize to him. And then it goes into, at the beginning of part 7, all the conspiracy theories surrounding his father's death.
Oh man.
When,
Didn't that just make you sick?
It made me sick to my stomach because you and I are both in this business, and to see a lot of sports writers say, come up with these theories. Listen, these guys are columnists. And I put this on Twitter. I'm going to somewhat defend these guys because they are columnists. They're supposed to express their opinion more than the average reporter. But your job as a columnist is to base your opinion off of what is fact, rather than coming up with these wacky conspiracy theories that doesn't have any factual evidence to it. And it just made me sit there and think, all these conspiracy theories around Michael Jordan's father's death, what would the NBA be like if Twitter was around during that time? Imagine Twitter and social media around during the time Michael Jordan's father passed away, or during that whole era. And you know what? I don't blame Michael Jordan whatsoever from stepping away from the game. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theories around why he decided to go play professional baseball, but hearing that story, I thought was great. The Steve Kerr practice thing, Judd Bushler pretty much saying we were his own teammates and we were afraid of him. Hearing all the alpha dog, the jerk stories, I think tonight was hands down the best one. The previous favorite was the Dennis Rodman one.
Same.
All the the Las Vegas adventures, that was awesome. But the emotion tied to tonight's episode 7 and 8, I thought was brilliant.
Absolutely. It was fantastic. It was an episode unlike any other, and hey, we move on now. Hey, we've been waiting for Chris to show up. We'll give him a few minutes while we wrap up the show. If he comes in between that time, then we'll get to it. If he doesn't, then he doesn't, and we'll move on. But Justin, let's go ahead and get into it. A new segment my man Justin wanted to run. It's called "Don't Be That Guy." Who's your victim today?
So my victim for today, honestly, I don't even know the guy's name, but he was decided to play one-on-one with a lady. And there's a reason why in the caption of this video, this is why Karen Durant is trending. Look at this guy getting, oh my goodness. And listen, it gets me all excited because listen, it's because she's wearing those flat shoes where your toes are all sucked into the tip. So those aren't comfortable shoes. This guy is wearing gym shorts, a t-shirt, and basketball shoes. Meanwhile,
this she diced him with the left. Woo.
Exactly. Went to the left, did the scoop layup, and she made it look so easy. And this guy knew right away as soon as that ball went through the hoop, I'm going viral for all the wrong reasons. And like I said, it's not because of who they are, but it's what she's wearing. She's wearing the sweater, and then she's wearing those shoes. And then the fact that she cooked him like that in front of all of his friends while he's been playing basketball probably for an hour since before she came there. Oh, don't be that guy. Don't be him.
Cooked him is right. Absolutely sauced him up. And that was fantastic stuff. And then my don't be that guy is first of all, I'm not even going to put this on one guy. I'm going to just put this on the Washington Post. Dude, for real, they come up with this article today, and it is the most atrocious piece of clickbait you could ever watch or look at a time like this. It starts off, the pandemic has reminded us we don't need sports anymore. And it just is just awful, just awful. We don't need sports in our lives. We need less. Why? I don't need to read this, and I don't need to know who wrote this to know that the Washington Post looks like absolute crap for really running this story. First of all, the reasons I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know because it's at this time and place when we don't have sports. It's okay to acknowledge that you miss them. It doesn't mean that they have to be your all everything, but it's okay to say that you miss them. And for this article to try and bait people into reading it, I just thought it was so below the waist. I was like, you know what? Go on somewhere else with this. At this time where people are they're clamoring for anything right now, and then you want to just kind of poop on them, get out of here with that mess.
But Saul, that this is one of the unfortunate elements about media today is this is clickbait. This is a way to get everybody talking about your brand and what you wrote. People are hating on it. I strongly dislike it. I think that is complete garbage, whatever that person wrote. But people are clicking on it because they're like, wow, I want to know what this person really has to say. They get a bunch of clicks, and that's good for the Washington Post. Listen, it's good journalism at the Washington Post. Kevin Blackistone, Mike Wilbon, Tony Kornheiser, those are all the Washington Post guys. Those guys are awesome. There's great journalism at the Washington Post, but that right there, we don't need sports right now. That's just a line of baloney and absolute clickbait.
For sure. Well, hey, we gave him a chance. It didn't happen today, but that doesn't mean we can't try again in a couple weeks with Chris, Scarface, Wilmore. With Street Beefs, and we had some videos all tuned up.
We were ready to go.
We're going to show all the knockouts and everything, but hey, it is what it is. Sometimes it gets a little late over there on the West Coast, and actually, we probably will make a slight adjustment to our schedule after the Last Dance episodes have finally come to an end, because there's really no point in going this late after that point. But the reason why we have been going this late is because we want to watch the episodes and then give you our thoughts. So
absolutely.
But for my man Justin Spears, you got anything else?
I just want to remind you guys that the sun is starting to stay out longer and the sun is very hot. So don't be like this guy and not wear sunscreen when you go into the pool, when you're hanging out at your mom's house for Mother's Day, because your boy looks like a medium rare steak. And I did not expect to look like this. And I'm terribly sorry that I looked like a tomato.
The sun done sauced you up for sure.
So wear sunscreen. Those are my last words.
Justin Spears right there, my man, Justin. And we'll give you a little tease of the show open that we showed today. We're going to end it out with this. And then, hey, we'll see you all next week.
Make sure you subscribe to the Total BS podcast on YouTube, because you got to watch us. You got to watch the show to get the full experience. So make sure you subscribe to the Total BS podcast on YouTube. Also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well.
And Google Podcasts now. We have been added to Google Podcasts. So, yeah, we're coming up, baby. We're like the Jeffersons.
Layers.
Till next time, folks. Peace.
Your fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just part of the program. Spit your best 16 if you must. You're not whack, you just sound whack rapping after us. Yo, your fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just a part of this program. Spit your best 16 if you must. You not whack, you just sound whack rapping after us.